Hey guys, Modern Classic Moto here. Today I'm going to be doing an installation video on some upper fork covers on my 2018 XSR700. I've taken the forks off a few times to do the boots and some other things. I've never installed these fork covers before, so I'm going to be kind of learning as I go too, but it does look pretty simple. The parts I got are from partzilla.com. They're the OEM fork covers designed for the XSR700 and the MT-07s that are also cross-compatible with these XSR700s. I will reference the part numbers in the description of this video so you guys can see. The parts that you're going to need are the fork covers themselves, two of these O-rings, and then a couple rivet plastic screws. So I will say that this is not the traditional way of jacking these up. I had to get a little creative because I don't have a proper motorcycle stand. So I was able to suspend this from my Raptors and put a floor jack with some padding underneath of it to get the whole bike up in the air so I can take the forks off. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is remove both 12mm mounting bolts on each caliper. As you can see, mine are a little chewed up from being removed so many times since I've had this front end taken apart on multiple occasions for different reasons. Alright, after the bolts are removed, go ahead and slide the caliper off. Now we're going to want to remove the ABS sensor. Alright, now that we're finished with that, we're going to want to make sure to do the same thing to the other side, minus the ABS sensor. After both calipers are completely removed, we can move on to removing the wheel itself. First thing you want to do is take this lock screw out. Once you get that lock screw out, you can unbolt the axle. And the tire should come right off. Once the axle is completely out, you should be able to remove the front wheel completely. After taking the axle completely out and removing the front wheel, make sure that you remove these bearing spacers off of each side, otherwise they can fall off and get forgotten about later on. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is loosen these triple clamps, starting from the top and then working my way down. Alright, now we're going to move on to the lower ones right here. There are two screws on the bottom portion. Make sure they're both nice and loose, and then of course make sure to do the same process on both sides. And then originally I was trying to get away without having to do this, but to make it a lot easier I ended up removing this front fender. I've got an aftermarket one, but it should be pretty self-explanatory. There's just a few brake line brackets and a few connectors that you have to unbolt to get that front fender off. This will disconnect the forks from each other, that way you can move them individually. At this point you should be able to slide each fork down by itself. If you're having trouble doing that, make sure that your clamps are completely loose. According to the diagram that Yamaha provides, it looks like this O-ring goes on first underneath the fork cover itself, and then you have this little hole on the side that the rivet will eventually go through. At first I wasn't 100% sure what the O-ring's purpose was, and I could be wrong, but I believe it's to fill the gap between the fork itself and the actual cover. You'll notice at the top of the cover if it's snug around the forks, and then as you get lower it tapers off and gets wider. After placing the O-ring on the fork as well as the fork cover, you should be able to start to slide the fork back up through the clamps and through the fork cover. I did have to use quite a bit of force because I think the O-ring was getting caught inside of the cover itself. Once you've got both forks completely through the covers and the triple clamps, make sure that the gap from the top of the fork to the top of the triple clamp is exactly the same on both sides before you tighten them down. Alright, now that the triple clamps are tight, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my front fender and then put the front wheel back on. So the camera cut out when I was putting the front wheel back on. Just make sure that you put the bearing spacer on each side over the bearing before putting the axle through, and then that you also put that lock screw in. Alright, now I'm going to put the calipers back on and put a little bit of Loctite on each mounting bolt. I use the red stuff. The last thing you want is one of the calipers coming loose while you're riding. I'm also going to be reinstalling the ABS sensor. After making sure that everything is tight, make sure that that lock bolt on your front axle is tight as well. This will help ensure that your front wheel doesn't ever come loose. It's always a good idea to do a good once over when you're done with everything, just to make sure that everything's tight. Alright, now that it's all back on the ground and tight, we can put the rivet through the fork cover, which will secure its place on the bike. You'll want to twist the fork cover just right until it lines up with the pre-existing hole that's on the bike. Once the holes are completely lined up, you should be able to slide that rivet through with a little bit of pressure. Here's an up-close shot of where the rivet goes. Thanks for watching, guys. That concludes my video. My last little video clip didn't quite turn out, so here's a little sneak preview for my next video, which will be an installation of this 7-inch headlight with the kit that Brogue Motorcycles makes. If you like my video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If there's anything you'd like to see me do in the future, please comment down below. And to check out more pictures and videos of my bike, head over to my Instagram at Modern Classic Moto.